Welcome to episode 2 of the Sonarpilot podcast. My name's Johnny Miller. I'm the label manager at Sonarpilot Audio. And in this episode, I continue my discussion with Michael Moppert, aka Sonarpilot, about the Mirage project. We dig deep into the latest video release, Codex, get under the skin of what it's all about, the ideas, the thinking behind the visuals, the thinking behind the music. And we look at what's coming up in the series. So Michael, let's talk about Codex. And I wanted to ask you about some of the establishing visuals in the video as the video gets going. They feel like a bit of a departure from the previous Mirages, the previous videos in the series, in terms of being a little bit more human, a bit more real world.
Yeah, that's right. The big theme of this Mirage is, it is this never-ending search of us humans to understand our universe and our place in the cosmos. Since literally thousands of generations, we humans have looked up at the sky and tried to make sense of what we see up there. And at the same time, we looked around us and peered into ourselves and the matter around us and tried to understand what we are all made of. And looking back in history, our interpretations of the cosmos and the world around us sometimes seems primitive or quaint. And today we believe with all our science, we're about to solve these mysteries. We're searching for the ultimate world formula, for the God particle, and we're hoping to marry our theories of the very large and the very small, but just add a few hundred years and our most advanced theories about these fundamental questions will look as outdated as these old books and these old theories. And the visuals of this Mirage illustrate that contrast. And one of the core elements that we used there is, we have this juxtaposition between an old 17th century scientific book and the very modern synthetic world that we generated in a computer. The codex that we are using there it was published first, I guess, in 1617 by a guy called Robert Flood, or Roberts de Fluctibus. He studied medicine and chemistry in Oxford, but there were also magic rituals with the Jesuits in the Pyrenees. So he was a very interesting guy. And then he became a prosperous doctor in London. He was at the same time also an astrologer and mathematician, a cosmologist. At that time, you didn't really focus just on one discipline. So you had a lot of different topics that you were covering. And but it's important to understand that he was at the heart of the scientific community of his day and age. So he wasn't just some loony that published some weird magic books. So at his time, he summarized everything that was to be known in this codex, and it has a long Latin title, but basically it boils down to a history of metaphysics, physics, and technology. And it's really beautifully illustrated, and it's really fascinating to look at. You can find it on archive.org. So we took some of these illustrations and combined them with these very contemporary or modern synthetic worlds that we generated in a computer to just illustrate this tension between this old knowledge and the new knowledge and how this all evolves. I think it's fascinating to see how these the visual language changes over time. And I think, of course, in the future we will look back at our time and think, okay, how primitive was the signs of the early 21st century. But I think we will never really get to the point where we can explain everything in our cosmos. I mean, we will know way, way more in 200 years, in 500 years from now, and if we don't blow up our world or poison ourselves in 1,000 years. But I think there will always be some fundamental questions that humans will ask. Where is our place in this universe? Where do we come from and where do we go? And I think even with the most advanced science and technology, we will never be able to answer those fundamental questions. I think this is really beautiful. That makes us human.
You're listening to the Sonarpilot podcast, episode 2. I'm with Michael Moffat, aka Sonarpilot, and we're talking about the third Mirage in the series at the mirageproject.com, Codex. So something else that really sticks out to me as being different about this one compared to the other Mirages in the series, musically, it feels to me more symphonic. The obvious reference to classical music in there, especially in the intro for Codex. That's no surprise to me, though. I know your passion for classical music.
Well, you're right. The music for Codex is certainly different from the first 2 tracks that we released. It's in a way it's a more meditative theme. It's beatless, and it starts with some themes that are loosely based on a track by Claude Debussy, which is called Trois Nocturnes, or 3 Nocturnes, and it's the first movement there. It's Nuages, so the clouds. As you might know, Debussy was a composer who was very much influenced by Impressionist painters and poets of his time, and he wrote these 3 pieces towards the end of the 19th century, and they were first released in 1900. I really love how Debussy works and thinks. He's very open for other forms of art. He goes to exhibitions. He has painter friends who are impressionists, and he tries to come up with new forms of music, with a new language of music that mirrors these new trends in other art forms.
Yeah, that's just really familiar. That's the Mirage Project. Music inspired by visuals, visuals inspired by music.
I think he illustrates that very nicely in a letter to a friend. He writes, "I am more and more convinced that music, by its very nature, is something that cannot be cast into a traditional and fixed form. It is made up of colors and rhythms."
Michael, let's talk about Imperium. It's the next video in the series, the 4th Mirage. It's due out on the 4th of September 2020. And for me, this one, I think out of all of them, is maybe the most detailed.
Yeah, you're right. The visuals are probably some of the most amazing in this series so far. In a way, it's a continuation of the theme that we had in Codex, but this time we make a journey into the microcosm in a very strange empire that stretches right below the surface of our everyday world. The story is a bit, we are board of an imaginary quantum probe. The video starts at the macro level in some futuristic high-tech urban sprawl, and then this vessel which transmits the video breaks through the surface into a strange, fully imagined subatomic world. That there is always this space which is present right beneath the surface of our everyday existence, but we cannot really access that space. Everything we see and touch, our own bodies, our brains, the Milky Way, the stars, everything is made of this weird soup of particles that are just governed by very, very weird laws that are completely foreign to us. Just imagine, we have roughly 30 trillion cells in our body, and each cell is made of about 100 trillion atoms, and each atom consists of mostly empty space and a few bizarre quantum objects. This is really an amazing empire. And it's absolutely not accessible for our normal senses. The only way to really access this world is mostly by mathematics. So for 99% or even more of us normal blokes, it's not possible to really understand what's going on there. It's best described by some highly developed mathematical formula. So what we do here is just really give the viewer a totally imagined but still fantastic journey into this realm there, and we're trying again with this mirage to make the viewer look at the world in fresh amazement and fresh appreciation for the wonders of the world that we live in.
So that's Sonarpilot Imperium, the fourth in the series of the Mirage Project videos. You can see at themirageproject.com. This is the Sonarpilot podcast, episode 2. My name's Johnny Miller. I'm the label manager at Sonarpilot Audio, and I'm in conversation with Michael Moppert, aka Sonarpilot. Michael, in episode 1, we talked about the Mirage Project's production process using fractal images as a source material for the videos. I wanted to dig a little bit deeper and understand a little bit more about what fractals actually are. You know, where do they come from? What's the science behind them?
Fractals are a very interesting phenomenon. You certainly have seen fractal structures in nature. You can find them pretty much anywhere. You know, if you look at a tree or at the river or coastlines, or perhaps even more prominently at a hurricane. If you look at a hurricane from space or a galaxy with these different whirling arms, these are all systems where the same patterns occur again and again at different scales and sizes. You know, the best known is probably this weird broccoli, this Romanesco broccoli, which looks like these small pyramids, these twisted pyramids, and you look at each of these pyramids, and they consist again of twisted pyramids, and then you look at these smaller pyramids, and so forth and so forth. And so these are fractal structures. Or if you look at the river, then you have the arm of a river which bends, and then you have smaller side arms of the river, and so forth. These are structures that we find everywhere in nature. And the term fractal was originally coined by a mathematician called Mandelbrot in 1975, and he developed a set of mathematical formulas and also started to use these to generate computer graphics that are based on these fractals. And of course, at the beginning, they were very, very, very primitive. But today, with the ever-growing computing power that we have, these fractal images, or these fractal formulas, I should say, are just generating really amazing things. And what is really mind-boggling, I mean, I've been working now with these formulas for many months, but I'm still amazed what happens there. You have a formula that's perhaps half a page long. It doesn't even look that complicated. And you put it into one of these rendering engines, and then you have a whole world that you can explore, and you can go into details on end. It just never ends, and you can explore worlds that no one has ever seen. You tweak a formula a bit here and there, and really weird things happen. And so this is the basic of all the visuals, of the synthetic visuals that we are using in the Mirage project. Now, a lot of these fractal formulas generate rather boring worlds, or worlds that are just falling apart when you go closer, inspect some details. So you have to sift through literally hundreds and hundreds of formulas. So what we just generated again hundreds of still images, just to get an impression what each of these formulas might generate, and then we did a selection. We did the first short animation, and for each animation you need computing power. Each animation, of course, each second of an animation consists of 25 individual pictures that need to be rendered by a computer. And some of these worlds are really complex, and so it can take up to 2 weeks to render a minute or of video. So the production process is quite laborious, but it's really fantastic what you can explore in these worlds. But of course, we didn't just want to create nice pictures. For us, it was always an important element that we wanted also to first and foremost tell a story. And these pictures and these words were an inspiration to explore a certain theme that we have in these mirages. And then once we had an idea what we wanted to illustrate and to tell, we made a final selection, started the final rendering procedure, and then we started to put these videos together in yet another piece of software where you just edit the visuals. And in a parallel procedure, I started to generate to create the music, and that gave us the possibility to really make sure that the visuals and the soundtrack are very, very closely linked. And that is, I guess, one of the reasons why these videos are so are drawing you into this world, because these two elements are working together so closely.
So what's clear to me is that the generation of these images and putting them into the form of a music video, it's a team effort. I know you've been working with Roger Madder, who's a filmmaker and a friend of yours. Tell us a little bit about Roger. Tell us a little bit about how you started working with him and how you two operate together.
I've known Roger now we started to work together back in the early 90s. So we've been friends for 20 years now, I guess. Actually 30 years almost. Roger, his background is more. He comes from computer animations, and in the early 90s, it became possible for individual people to generate rather decent computer animations. Before that, it was just the computers were just the really powerful computers were just way too expensive. And so he started to work in that field, and we did a couple of projects together, multimedia projects at that time. And then we actually, with a friend of ours, we started a company, and we had been working together for more than 15 years on various commercial projects. And then he left the company, and we stayed in touch. And then when I thought about the Mirage project, well, at that time it wasn't called the Mirage project, but I was just thinking about how could we break out of that routine to just publish one electronic track after another, or publish an album and then move on. And I thought, the visual element is something that we hadn't really explored. So I got back in touch with Roger, and we just, played around with ideas, and then we ran into fractal technology. And Roger was really fascinating from the get-go, and it's a rather opaque science. It's really the software there is tricky to handle. Some of these fractals behave like divas. You never know what you get. I mean, it's really an exploration. You can't really just buy a set of software and some some presets and everything goes smoothly. It is really a long process, but he got a big kick out of that, and he really started to work with these fractals, and so we have this collaboration where he's really working on, let's say, the raw materials, and I then try to figure out, okay, what do we do with this, and what could be the story behind it. And so it's a bit like a cameraman and perhaps a director, and actually, you know, it's at this point we are already looking at you know, the next set of formulas. Actually, this is perhaps a very sneak preview, but we think that there is going to be a season 2 of the Mirage project, and so Roger and I have started to again sift through hundreds of formulas, and we have run into some really weird worlds that we are pretty excited about, but it's probably something that we talk about in a later podcast.
Absolutely. Michael, thanks so much for your time once again. And you've been listening to the Sonarpilot podcast, episode 2. We'll be back again next month for a bit more of a deep dive into the Mirage project and the Sonarpilot audio label. My name's Johnny Miller. I'm the label manager at Sonarpilot Audio, and with me today, as always, has been Michael Moppet, aka Sonarpilot. Keep in touch with us on social media at Sonarpilot Audio on Twitter and on Instagram. And we're on Facebook as well, of course. Just search Sonarpilot and you'll find our Facebook page. Be sure you visit www.themirageproject.com to see all the Sonarpilot Mirages from the series. Next up, the next release, September 4th, Imperium. Check the show notes below, as it were, for a little bit more detail of some of the things that Michael's been talking about today. Some links and little references for you. And that just about wraps it up for this episode. Take care, and we'll hopefully see you all again next month. Peace.